My name is Kagiso Tlogbatla. I'm co-founder of SV Capital. But I'll let Ayanda kick us off first, since it's Women's Month, and she can kick off with the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kagiso. So good evening to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. So today we're doing a webinar presentation on our cattle investment. So just some house rules. If you do have a question, this is a Q&A session. So please feel free to ask us any question around the investment. The purpose of the webinar today really is to provide clarity on our investments and give investors a bit more comfort on how we do our investments and why it's a good idea to invest in alternatives. So I think we can kick off the presentation, Kagiso. So the team behind SV Capital, by introduction, I'm Ayanda Machola. I am the co-founder and CEO of SV Capital. Then my business partner is Kagiso Tlogbatla, and he's the co-founder and COO of SV Capital. So just to give you a quick introduction to SV Capital and give you insights into why we actually started SV Capital. So SV Capital is a South African alternative fund manager where we're offering innovative investment products that are geared for digitization. SV Capital offers fractional ownership of physical assets. Now, our flagship product is cattle, and we offer fractional ownership of cattle, and you can start investing in cattle from as little as 500 Rand. Now, what fractional ownership means is that you co-own the asset alongside other investors. And our focus with our investment products are structured to appeal to the traditional African concept of value. And when you look at cattle, cattle has been used for a very long time as a value dominant, as a wealth determinant, and also used as a value determinant in some things like iLobola negotiations. SV Capital is 100% Black owned, and it's a youth owned company. And as you may see, it's also 50% owned, and we're a level EE1 contributor. So the company was established in 2017. Both Kagiso and I jumped off from our corporate jobs to start SV Capital. And in establishing the company in 2017, our goal behind SV Capital was to create an easy to understand and affordable investments. In 2017, we were also selected as one of the top 80 startups to receive residency in the Global Entrepreneurship Network. And then in 2018, we were selected as a top 40 startup in South Africa as part of Orange Corners. Orange Corners is an initiative put together by the Netherlands government and our government to support entrepreneurs in the country. In 2018, we also came as runner-up in the Best Tech Startup in the African continent, and this was part of the African Development Bank's competition looking for very innovative startups in the country. Now, in establishing SV Capital, we were trying to figure out these three key problems that we realized were in the market at the time when we established SV Capital. We found that traditional investment products tend to be very complex. And in them being complex and complicated, it was driven off the fact that they use very complex jargon, which didn't really drive simplicity in understanding how investments work. We also found that traditional investment products don't really speak to the broader market. They cater to an elite few who understand how this investment works and also have the minimum investments to start investing. With also looking at traditional investments, we found that they deliver below average returns. And I mean, as any investor, you're always chasing good returns in the short term. Now, in creating SV Capital, we created an African solution that focuses on creating wealth in an age-old way by investing in cattle. Our forefathers and their forefathers kept cattle as a sign of wealth, and we thought it's a good idea to integrate that and bring that back into our culture. We look to create easy-to-understand products that have largely excluded and marginalized investors in South Africa. We also look to democratize investments and make them accessible to everyone. and we look to create products that provide attractive returns. Now, our products are innovative and disruptive, and as I mentioned, they do appeal to the traditional African concept of value and wealth. We also pride ourselves in that our products are easy to understand and affordable. Now, this slide just shows us all the products we currently have on hand. We have the cattle investment with a minimum investment of 500 Rand. We also have the iLobola fund, and the minimum investment on that is 15,000 Rand. Then we've got the short-term investment. The minimum investment on that is 1,000 Rand. And we've got the Section 12J cattle investment with a minimum investment of 10,000 Rand. And then we've got the Tuk investment, which is actually one of our newly launched products. In future, we will do a webinar just to focus on the Tuk investment. But today, as mentioned when we started, we will focus on the cattle investment and the iLobola fund. Now, the cattle investment we offer is focused on providing investors the ability to invest in cattle. And we do this by partnering with established farmers in the agricultural sector. Now, to date, we've partnered with one of the big players in the industry, a company known as Beefcorp, and we participate in the buying and selling of cattle. Now, cattle will sit in a feedlot for 120 days, and this is a specific part of the value chain in the agricultural sector. We participate in something called feedlotting, where we buy the cattle at a weight of about 200 to 230 kilograms. We fatten them up until they reach the target weight of 450 to 500 kilograms. And once they've reached that weight, that's when we exit the investment and we sell the cattle to an abattoir. Now, the returns on this investment are driven off the weight gain of the animal and also the price that we sell the cattle for. Now, just to provide clarity on how this investment works, so we raise funds from various investors. As mentioned earlier, we provide the cattle investment through fractional ownership. So we raise money from various investors, and once we've collected that money, we use that money to purchase cattle. Now, it's important to highlight that part of raising our money, we do this over a period of 2 months. This is something we call a raising cycle. So we spend 2 months raising money from various investors, and after that 2 months has closed, we take that money and invest in a batch of cattle. Now, that batch of cattle will sit on our partner farmer's farm. And our farmer, part of the process of us partnering with our farmer is that they will source the cattle for us and they will purchase the cattle for us. Once the cattle have arrived on the farm, the cattle will be managed and maintained by our partner farmer. This process takes about 120 days, as I mentioned, to fatten up the cattle to get them ready to be sold to the abattoir. After 120 days, the cattle are sold under an offtake agreement that we have in place at the current market price. Now, it's very important to highlight that with us having an offtake agreement in place, pretty much secures the market before we've even invested in the cattle. And this is very important from an investment perspective because we know exactly where we're selling our cattle before we've even invested. So we'll never have an issue of not being able to sell our cattle. Once we've sold the cattle after 120 days, then those proceeds are paid back to us and we repeat the process again. The cattle investment is for a period of 12 months, so we ideally repeat this at least 3 times in a year in order to maximize returns for our investors. Now, there's 2 ways to invest in the cattle investment. There's a monthly contribution. The minimum investment on that is 500, or you can go with the option of a lump sum investment, and the minimum investment on that is 2,000 Rand. Now, just to break down the 2 options, we've got a monthly contribution, and how this works is very similar to a debit order. So you can think of this as you setting up a debit order for yourself to continuously contribute towards your own investment. We suggest that you contribute over a 12-month period, but you can start and stop this investment as and when you require, because life can happen at any point in time. And with your monthly contributions, this will be invested in batches every 2 months. Then the second option is a lump sum investment. This is a once-off investment that you make, and you can definitely add more money if needed. And the money will be invested in batches every 2 months.
Cool. So the next investment that we have available is the iLobola fund. So the iLobola fund, very similar to the cattle investment. The differences are quite small. It's a 18-month investment period as opposed to a 12-month investment period. The cattle goes through the same process as as the 12-month investment. We buy them and we keep them on the farm for 120 days, and they gain weight, and then we just roll over that process until the 18 months has been reached. So how that works is basically as I've just said, we still use the same partner farmer, and as opposed to it being 12 months, it's actually 18 months. And the biggest difference here with the iLobola investment is that you can receive a cow at maturity. This product was specifically built around assisting those that wanted to pay lobola. Some families are still adamant on receiving physical cattle when you pay lobola, at least one cow, and then the rest in cash. So we give clients the ability to actually take a cow, and whatever's remaining they can take in cash, or they can decide that they want, for the funds, they want everything in cows rather, or they just want cash. So as a client, you have the option between all of that. As I mentioned, as Ayanda mentioned earlier, the minimum investment for the Lobola investment is 15,000 Rand, and it's a once-off investment, and you can add money as you need, and it's an 18-month period. So, who is our partner farmer? So, SV Capital's partnered with a company by the name of Beefcore. Beefcores are our largest partner farmer, so they're quite a large feedlot in South Africa. And they've got over 80 years of experience, and it's a highly mechanized farm based in Bronkhorstspruit, on the border of Gauteng and Mpumalanga. Beefcore's got the ability to basically house 30,000 heads of cattle, which is quite a lot. And we partnered with Beefcore specifically because of their experience and their ability to, and their vertical integration. So they are a well-integrated farm. They also own an abattoir called Chamdor, which is in Krugersdorp. So if a lot of you have probably have eaten meat from the likes of Pick n Pays, ShopRite, and Checkers, you've actually probably eaten some of our cows. So what are the fees on this investment? So the fees on the cattle investment is there's an upfront fee of 2.8% excluding VAT. We've recently changed our fee structure. So it's an upfront fee of 2.8% excluding VAT. And then the only fee that you will pay would be a performance fee. And how the performance fee works is that if we surpass our benchmark, we will then share the amount above the benchmark with our clients, 80-20. So our clients will take 80% and we'll take 20% of that. To give you an example, if our benchmark is 10%, if we say our benchmark is 10%, and we manage to achieve 12%, the 10% would go to our clients, and the remaining 2% will be split between SV Capital and the client, an 80-20% split. So SV Capital will get 20% of the 2%, and the client will get 80% of the 2%. So who can invest with SV Capital? Individuals, stockpiles or investment clubs, as well as companies can invest. So what's our competitive advantage, and maybe what are the reasons why you should invest with us, maybe rather than with anyone else? So SV Capital was the first in market to introduce fractional ownership in cattle. The beauty of our investment is that you actually don't own a full cow by yourself, and that's why our investments are affordable. Our minimum is 500 Rand for the cattle investment. You actually own the cattle alongside other people. So the nice thing about that is you actually sharing the risk with other people, which brings me to my next point of fractionalization. So it allows you to invest alongside other people, really encompassing the Ubuntu, the African concept of everyone working together. And the benefits of that is if you are invested in a herd of 100 cattle, you don't own a specific cow. So should one cow die, for example, you don't take the full loss. The loss is shared amongst the 100 heads of cattle. So that's one of the big benefits of that. And we've got a really nice tech platform that's quite easy to use and very slick. If you've ever done any online shopping, definitely you would find our platform extremely user-friendly, and you can invest in in less than 2 to 3 minutes, you would own a fraction of a cow. We also provide our clients with diversification. So we provide you with investments that you typically would not have access to in your retail banks or your other investment houses, which is what makes us stand out, I guess, from the rest. Cool. So Ayana and I have gone through the presentation and given you guys some context on SV Capital. This is obviously a question and answer session, but we wanted to provide the context first to give you guys maybe some time to think of some questions, or maybe for us to trigger some thoughts with regards to any questions you might have. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the comments. We'll be happy to take your questions. So I see one of the questions is, what is the minimum number of invested per cow? Investors per cow. Cool. So we don't have a minimum number of investors. As we mentioned, we raise money in a pool structure. So for example, we would collect money over a 2-month period. And if we collect 4 million rand, for example, we then take 4 million rand and we use that to purchase cattle. So it doesn't necessarily translate to a 500. If you're investing 500 rand, you actually own 1/8 of a cow. It doesn't translate to that. So that's what makes it a little bit easier. And another question, maybe for you, Ayanda, to take is, to whom does the risk of illness or death of the cows lie with? How is the risk guarded against?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. And with the illness and the death of cows, so that's the risk you're taking on through this investment. But what we do have in place, we've got a guarantee with our farmer. So our farmer guarantees up to 99% of the herd, which means that if 1% of the herd dies, that's industry norm, it's expected and acceptable. And then anything above that, our farmer would guarantee. So what this practically means is that in a herd of 100, if one cattle dies, then it's acceptable, it's taken as industry norm. Anything above that, our guarantee would kick in and our farmer would reimburse us whatever the cost of those cattle would be back into the herd. So that guarantee is very important for us because it protects us from such things as illnesses, any deaths, anything that may happen to the cattle, because part and parcel of the partnership we have in place with our farmer is that we have partnered with them for them to manage our cattle and look after them. So if mortality exceeds that 1% industry norm, then they do take on the responsibility to reimburse us on those losses.
Cool. One of the other questions was, the initial question, can we see your faces just before we start? So I've just switched
Yes.
for us to show our faces. We apologize in advance. Our videos might not be that great. Yeah, the video might not be that great, but at least I guess we will make your wish come true and you can see our faces. Are there any other questions? Please, if there are any other questions, feel free to type them into the bottom or into the comment section. We'll be more than happy to answer those questions. Maybe
yeah, and I think maybe while we're waiting for a few questions, we can sort of clarify a bit of a couple of points we've come across and a few questions that we've been asked in the past. So I think the most important point to note is that the cattle investment is a 12-month investment and your money would be locked in for that 12 months. So there is no option for an early withdrawal, there's no option for an early exit, because as you can imagine, we are dealing with physical livestock and it will be very difficult to sell one livestock to reimburse one investor. So with the investment, you are locked in for a period of 12 months. And then after the 12 months, we do give you two options. So you can withdraw your funds. If you decide to withdraw your funds, then your capital, so the initial money you put in, plus whatever return we've earned over the 12 months, would be paid back into your bank account. Then the second option is a reinvestment option. So you can reinvest your funds, and this will be reinvested again into the cattle investment for another 12 months.
Yeah. Another question that was just asked now is, what is your background? And she says, I'm asking if you're passionate about farming. So I can answer that question. From a passion perspective, our backgrounds are basically myself and Anna's backgrounds are in finance, specifically in investments. And what we, and I'll speak on behalf of Ayana, I'll speak as we as SV Capital. What we are really passionate about, I would say, is we're passionate about creating products that are inclusive, investment products that are inclusive, ones that deliver positive and good returns, but also ones that are very easy to understand for majority of the population. So we want to create a saving and investment culture in South Africa, and in order for us to do that, we need to create products that are easy to understand for majority of the population. So farming is something that's quite simple and easy to understand for everyone on the African continent, because as Ayanda said earlier, it is something that's deeply entrenched in our culture. So from a passion perspective, we're passionate about providing our clients and South Africans with investment products that make sense. And in this case, cattle happens to be one of those products. Cool. I just want to see, there's also another question. So there's a lady that says, I've heard that this isn't a regulated business. I understand that this is fairly new, so maybe it's acceptable. But should the company face difficulties, what protection is there for investors? By the way, thank you for this amazing platform. I certainly am excited to invest. So, Anna, maybe you can take that.
Perfect. So just to address the regulation issue, so you are correct in saying that SV Capital is not regulated, and it's by no means by the fact that we're not trying to get regulated. So we have spoken to the FSCA, and they did come back to us with the fact that because we don't provide financial instruments, they can't necessarily regulate us. So we don't fit within the scope of being regulated. But we are aware that the FSCA is currently working on a white paper that will regulate companies like ours, because they view us as a crowd investing company rather than a financial institution company. So with that being said, we are working with the FSCA. We have sight of that working paper. We've contributed to it, and we're hoping that that regulation will come into play with the goal of eventually also being regulated. And then to answer your second question, what would happen if anything happens to SV Capital? So the beauty about our model is that the cattle are actually owned by our investors. So SV Capital is the agent between farmer and our investors. So if anything were to happen to SV Capital, as an investor, you still have ownership of those cattle, and you can sell it back into the market and recoup whatever funds you can recoup. And we've built this model specifically that way with the goal of protecting our investors' interests and also ensuring that we try and minimize the risks related to the investment as much as possible. And then just to take another question, I see there's a question here that says, when, date and time, is the short-term investment presentation taking place? So with the webinars, the plan is to have webinars as frequent as possible, and we will be looking at all our different products. So today's purpose is the cattle and iLobola fund investment, and then we will schedule a date to have the short-term investment, and I promise you won't wait too long. So we will announce that to everyone through all our social media platforms, and if you're already a client on our platform, you will get an email just with a reminder on the date and time for the short-term investment presentation.
Yeah, Ayanda, maybe if you can just turn off your video. I think it's just distorted. So we apologize for the quality of the video, guys. We'll definitely make sure that the next presentations it is better. But there's also another question with regards to the paperwork. So it says, what are the requirements for stock files to invest, i.e. paperwork requirements? So with regards to the paperwork, what we would require is for the stock file to elect a representative that can sign up, and their representative would provide us with a proof of address, with their ID, and then if there is any other Stockfile members that want to be on the account as representatives, because typically Stockfiles have got 3 or 4 people that maybe govern the group. They can feel free to also register on the platform, and we can add them on the account. And that's basically would require just basic FICA documents for everyone, for every Stockfile member. Another question is, what are the tax implications or any hidden costs? Ayanda, maybe you can take that.
Sure. So from a tax implications perspective, so by no means are we in a position to provide any advice on how to treat the tax on the investment. We would advise that you see a financial advisor or whoever you use to help you with your tax submissions. But the investment would have to be declared to SARS, and the interest earned would be seen as an interest when you're declaring this investment to SARS. And to address the second part of the question, any hidden costs? So we don't have any hidden costs. So what we presented regarding the fees we charge is exactly what is incorporated into the model. And I just have to mention that part of our model is that even though the cattle require monthly fees to be maintained, we do not ask for those fees from the client. So if you've given us 500 Rand, for us, that 500 Rand investment is a fully loaded cost, which means it will cater for purchasing the cattle, it will cater for the feed in order to fatten the cattle, it will cater for medicine and any other related costs to run this entire investment. So we will not ask for additional monthly investments or costs to be covered. We will not ask for additional money to be dispersed to us. As soon as you've invested your first amount, that money will be used holistically to invest in the cattle, and after 12 months you'll get your capital, which is the initial money you put in, plus whatever return you've earned over the 12 months. And just to highlight, I don't think we've mentioned the returns. So the returns we've achieved on the investment to date is 15.54%. And these are net of costs and net of fees. So basically this 15.54% is an investor's take home. And these returns are after 12 months. So this is after your funds have been locked in for a period of 12 months. And so for example, in real monetary value terms, if you were to invest 2,000 Rand, the potential return you're looking at after 12 months is roughly about 300 Rand. So your total investment after 12 months would be 2,300.
Yeah. I'm just looking.
Yeah.
I'm just looking if we have any other questions.
Do you have any other questions?
No. There's no other questions that have come up. But I guess the last really thing is, how do you get started if you want to invest? So you can visit our website, which is www.svcapital.co.za, and you can click on the top right hand button that says login or register. If you're an existing client, you can register. If you are a new client, if you're an existing client, you can log in. If you're a new client, you can register, and our registration process is fairly quick. It will take you probably less than 2 minutes to register, and you can then go ahead, pick the investment that you want, and contribute towards that investment. So for the cattle investment specifically, we have pools that open and close, and our pools open for a period of 2 months. When one pool closes, another one will open immediately. So if you miss a pool, don't worry about it. We've got one closing on the 31st of August. And what it means basically is when we close a pool, is just that we take all the funds that we have raised and we then invest those funds. And then if you invest after the pool is closed, you'll have to wait about 2 months in order for your funds to be invested. But if there's no other questions, Ayanda, do you have any other comments before we close?
Yes, so I think prior to closing off, we can address just a few of the FAQs that we normally get, and I'll potentially throw like 1 or 2 questions at you. So I'll start off. The first question that we normally get is, how often do I get feedback? So we will issue a report, a performance report, or a fact sheet, also known as a fact sheet, every 6 months. And this fact sheet will provide information on how the entire herd has performed, how the market's looking, and just give you an oversight on the entire investment's performance. Now, it's important to note that part of the 6 monthly reports that we issue, we won't update you on your specific investment, and we won't update your investment balance. So we'll only update you on your specific investment after the 12 months, and that's when we'll issue a statement to you and also update your balance on the website. And then, Kagiso, I think a question for you is, what are the potential risks on the investment?
Yeah. So the risks that you do take on the investment, I guess it's two main risks. So the one risk is that is the pricing risk. So what that means is basically how much are we going to sell the livestock for when it's ready to be sold. Now, the return that Ayanda mentioned earlier is based on market pricing. So we cannot control market pricing at all. It's basically, what the price is at the time of sale. So that's the biggest risk that you take as a client. And another risk, I guess, is that we can't guarantee how much weight the cows are going to gain. Just like humans, cows eat and gain weight, but not all the same, You get some people that have really good genes and eat and don't gain much weight. It also is the same with cows. But what happens is when the cows are purchased, we obviously look for specific breeds that that our farmers know really well, and I guess I would say understand how they perform in the feedlot.
Yes. So we do have another question from Tamara and Mudli. And she says, what happens to my investment should I pass on during the investment period? Are these investments willable, or do I appoint beneficiaries? And will they be paid out on my death, God forbid, or at the end of the investment term? I don't know. Do you want to take that?
Yeah. So what we do is that when you invest with us, we actually ask you for your banking details up front. The reason we do that is if there are any issues and it so happens that you do pass, the funds will be paid into your bank account and they'll be dealt with as part of your estate. So essentially, we can't transfer the funds to someone else. We can't transfer the investment to someone else. It will be transferred into your bank account, and whoever's dealing with your estate will then go on the wishes of your will. What we do is we do ask clients to provide us with next of kin's contact details, because once your funds mature and we're obviously not able to get hold of you, something could have happened, we don't know. We do get hold of your next of kin and we just verify that everything is still fine. But the funds will always be paid into your bank account. And there is a process once someone has passed on, how long their bank account stays open for, and there's a process with regards to that we'll deal with the banks. There's another question from Precious about the 90-day. He says, is the 90-day investment portfolio coming back in the future by any chance? I'll let you take that, Ayanda.
So Precious, at the moment, the 90-day investment is not coming back online. And why? The reason behind that is because the investment, we had to pull out of it due to COVID-19. Now, as you can imagine, there's so much uncertainty in the market right now. We don't know where things are going to go. So as a company, we decided that we'd pull the 90-day investment. But what we did do is put an alternative to a 90-day investment. So we do have a short-term investment, and I think you touched on it a bit earlier on. It's a 5-month investment with a minimum of 1,000 Rand. But we will set up a webinar to go in detail around how the short-term investment works and how it generates a return. But at this present moment, we don't foresee bringing the 90-day investment back online.
Cool. There's a lady that made a comment, says, why is Beefco only in Pretoria? So Beefco, the farm, is in Pretoria, but from a distribution perspective, or how far they distribute their meat, and the network is countrywide. It's actually global. Beefco actually exports beef to the Middle East. So they are based in Pretoria and Bronkhorstspruit, but they do operate basically in the whole world from a supply perspective. The supply meat everywhere around the world. Um, there's another question or comment. The lady says, "I know you said you would touch on the tuk tuk next time, but can you summarize?" I'll let you summarize, Ayanda.
Sure, but just before that, I saw two questions coming in about asking about when the tuk tuk pool is closing.
Yes.
So the tuk tuk pool is closing at the end of August. No, actually, it's actually closed right now because we've raised the money required for one tuk tuk. So we haven't launched a new pool for the tuk tuk as yet, but we will communicate this to all our investors when we have opened the next pool for another tuk tuk. So just to quickly explain how the tuk tuks work, so very similar to how the cattle investment works, the tuk tuk investment is also on a fractional basis. So you will be investing in a tuk tuk alongside other investors. You do have the option to own a tuk tuk by yourself, but the minimum investment on that is 55,200. But if you decide not to go that route and you want to co-own it with the other people, then the minimum investment on that is 4,600. Now, the tuk tuk investment is for a period of 18 months, and over that 18 months, your money is locked in. Now, with that money, we use it to buy a tuk tuk, and that tuk tuk is operated by our partner company, a company called Tuk Tuki, and they operate in the south of Joburg, places like Diepkloof, majority of Soweto, and what they do is offer transport services to individuals who may need to do short trips. So, for example, if someone needs to quickly go from the mall to their door at home, then a tuk-tuk would be called upon. Or if someone needs to leave home to go to a main area where taxis are caught, then a tuk-tuk would be called upon. So those are the routes that they normally operate. So how we make our money or return of this investment is off the tuk-tuks being used for commercial use, for transportation, and just ensuring that commuters get to where they need to go. The projected return on this is about 12% after 12 months. And I mean, we're quite excited because, like I said, we just closed off our first investment in the tuk-tuk. And we'll be starting with that on the 1st of September. So our tuk-tuk will be officially on the roads on the 1st of September.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay, well, you've summarized it.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't see any other questions unless you see any questions on your side.
No, I can't see any other questions, but maybe just to throw another question at you is, can I invest in a pregnant cow?
No. So the simple answer is no. So the cattle that we invest in are purely for beef purposes, and we don't breed at the moment. So yeah, the simple answer to that question is no, not at the moment. You can't invest in a pregnant cow. What I've done is I've actually gone to our website as well, so people can see. We do have FAQs on our website, and actually some of the FAQs that we're covering now, specifically around the cattle investment, are on our website. So you can feel free to visit our website and have a look at the different FAQs. We do go into a little bit of detail with regards to some of the frequently asked questions.
Yeah. So on my side, I think I can't see any more questions. So maybe just to wrap up the webinar tonight, I think the cattle investment, as we've explained, is a really good investment. It's a pioneer in the industry. I mean,